Building better skill trees. Not that many upvotes compared to downvotes from Game Maker's Toolkit, but it is actually something that is interesting in our case, because in my game I have a tower defense game, and you are actually able to spend skill points in your skill trees based on levels. So this guy is level 5 and he has spent 1, 2, 3 and now has a 4th point available, which means I can get a new ability, which we can then activate and have available to us on our bar right here. And so let's see if this guy can give us some tips on how to make better skill trees.
These days, it feels like you can't release a big blockbuster action game without one of...
Or a tower defense game, for that matter. The first tower defense game to have an actual skill tree in the game. Tangy Defense. Just wait until it's released. ETA? Soon.
These things. A skill tree.
Yeah.
You've definitely seen them before in games.
God, what the fuck, man? What is this? You can go into each, I guess, section here, huh? And the white ones are the ones you have allocated. Man, that looks a bit odd. Okay.
Like Tomb Raider and
7
Watch
years.
Dogs. They often have 3 distinct branches with cute names like Innovator or Hunter. In these games, you accrue experience points by playing through missions, and whenever you hit some sort of arbitrary threshold, you get a skill point.
Level
a skill
up,
point which you can spend to unlock a new
oh god, this is, oh god, okay.
ability.
Controls.
This might be something funky like a brand new move, or something a little less exciting like a few extra health points. Skill trees like this were...
Yeah, I think balancing stat point increases together with more interesting stuff in a skill tree is vital. So for example, to give you an idea of what I'm trying to do in my game, you can see here that I have cooldown reduction 5%. By default, the skill has 48 seconds cooldown. I can go here and it turns into 36 seconds. Now this is just a stat change. But I'm experimenting with something more interesting, in which you can essentially create a node that is of a different type. Call it keystone. So for example, in my game, and you know from other games probably, fire damage inflicts burns. I can burn an enemy 1 time. There's 1 burn effect on an enemy. And then if I want to, I can increase that stack count from 1 to 2, but I make the burns expire faster. So each burn in particular deals less damage, but I can have twice as many burns. Or one thing I really like is this one right here. Burns deal a lot more damage, but enemies affected by your burns run much faster. So if I burn an enemy, they start running very fast towards the exit. And so that is a gameplay changing mechanic that gives you a buff, but also a debuff. And in a tower defense game, stuff like that, in my opinion, makes a lot of sense and is fun. And could be fun in any other game too.
First found in number crunching RPGs like Diablo 2, but have since become ubiquitous in big budget action games, in everything from Spider-Man to Doom.
Have you guys heard that? Big budget action games. Tower defense games.
The point where it's now just an expected part of a modern console game, like climbable towers and microtransactions. But while I find a lot of these tropes to be pretty cliched and tiresome, I can totally see why skill trees work and how they can benefit certain games. For one...
Yeah, I mean, because you can individualize your experience if the skill tree is impactful enough to give you that altering gameplay experience. And so I think it's called, I don't know what the name for this is, but it is essentially a skill tree that changes the fundamental mechanics of the game, other than just giving you stat boosts, because yeah, that's why it's boring. It doesn't change how you play the game, and therefore you have a transformative skill tree. Thank you.
They can be used to trickle out complexity over the course of the game. If you started God of War with all of Kratos' powers, it might be completely overwhelming, and some players might stick to the simple stuff and never delve into the finer...
Actually, that's true. It's also a way to stagger game mechanics. Yeah, I never saw it that way. Yeah, true.
...details of the combat system. But when you earn new powers from a skill tree, your mechanical moveset opens up incrementally over the course of the game.
Yeah,
and because you spent some kind of currency on that move, you'll probably feel compelled to actually use it. Skill trees are also a nice way to make players feel like they've grown in power over the course of the game. At the start of the adventure, you're weak and only have a few special powers, but by the end, you're a walking tank with armfuls of abilities. This can also be used to keep players engaged. They can scan the skill tree to get a preview of abilities they'll be wielding later in the game, and then stick with it until they get to that point, excited about the prospect of playing with all those new powers.
Yeah, it gives you something to work towards. Yeah, that's true, especially if you can see ahead. Yeah, that's why you need to see ahead in the skill tree.
Skill trees also add meta-level decision-making into a game. They can create a different experience each time you play, and they give the UI team something to do. Someone's got to...
That's actually true, yeah. We've been working on the UI for this for a long time. Yeah. It's a nice procrastination method to, work on the UI and not work on gameplay.
Draw all those icons. But for all their benefits, most games squander their skill trees by making really poor choices about what to put on those branches.
Okay, let's see.
And so, in this video, we're going to talk about some popular mistakes that skill trees make and how we might be able to fix them.
Okay, how can we make good skill trees?
For starters, a lot of games that feature skill trees will allow the player to unlock most of the upgrades, if not all of them, by the end of the game, just through a normal amount of play.
So basically you can fill out the entire skill tree,
This really misses an opportunity to make players think hard about their choices. They're only thinking about what order they unlock the skills, when they could be thinking about which upgrades they'll actually be able to get. I personally...
See, this is what I'm torn between two. I don't know what is best to do in the game yet, and I don't know where to start, essentially, too. So let's say I give the player the opportunity or the possibility to unlock all of these nodes, and there will be more, right? This one is, let's say, 40% complete in terms of different abilities and nodes, but there will be much more. Now, is it good to have the player unlock all of the nodes over time? Just like in Bloons. In Bloons, you get all of the upgrades, but when you upgrade, you are choosing which upgrades you use. So for example, in my game here, let me reset this really quickly. You can have Shield Ops and Wind Slash. Okay, you can spend both points in them. They're currently both allocated. Now, if I go back to the game and I spawn a new hero, right here, I can choose whether to use Shield Ops or the Wind Slash. And if I decide on Wind Slash, I lose the ability and on this particular unit to train the Shield Ops because they are the same tier of ability. Now I'm training tier 2 abilities. That would be the Intervene or the Wolfang Fist. So that one would be an attack. This one is more defensive. Maybe in my particular game it is more feasible to have the player unlock the entire skill tree, just like in Bloons, and then make a decision based on every character what type of skills you want to use. But in an RPG game this would be boring. Like for example, think of Path of Exile. If you could just spend all the points in the entire skill tree, then every character would more or less be the same. I think Bloons upgrades are well done. It wouldn't be interesting if I can make a monkey with everything applied. Yeah, that's true. That's actually, that's a nice point.
Enjoyed the skill tree in Assassin's Creed Origins because I definitely wasn't able to afford all of the skills by the end of the game. Instead...
Yeah, it leaves you, when you're done with the game, it leaves you with the thought of, well, did I spend my points wisely or not? I want to redo this and maybe respec some of the points. Yeah.
I had to specialize. I focused on the Hunter and Seer branches, which were all about improving my abilities in stealth and increasing my options in taking out camps through tricking the AI and causing chaos. This created some cool outcomes, like how the Bayek in my game felt personal to me and his skills fit the way I chose to play the game.
What are these damage numbers? Holy,
repercussions for my choices. By neglecting the warrior branch, I was pretty lackluster at one-on-one combat. I often had to run away from direct encounters and find new ways to approach situations.
Come on, show me a damage number.
Immersive sims are also good at pretty interesting repercussions for my choices.
Wait a minute. This is supposed to be a damage number? You guys want to see a good damage number from a game that's very old? There you go. This is how you do damage numbers, guys. That's how you do it. That's much cooler. Silk Road Masterpiece? Yeah, true. Take a look at this. Man. Okay, well, anyways.
By neglecting the warrior branch, I was pretty lackluster at one-on-one combat. I often had to run away from direct encounters and find new ways to approach situations. Immersive sims are also good at showing the repercussions of picking certain skills. In the Deus Ex games, certain paths and options will be locked out based on the upgrades that you've chosen. forcing you
I've actually already made a decision. I think it's best for my game, a tower defense game, where you have to choose upgrades and you can't get all the upgrades, to let the player unlock the entire skill tree. It doesn't make sense to specialize in certain abilities in the skill tree if you have to make a decision anyways. Yeah.
to find alternate routes that better
like
suit
in
your
Bloons.
character. And in Prey, the
We already
more
learned
skills you
something.
unlock, the more
Cool.
alien you become, right up to the point where friendly turrets now consider you a threat and try to kill you. Another way skill trees screw up is
Goodness.
simply by making the skills just really boring.
Okay.
Making your attacks do a few percentage points more damage or giving yourself a couple extra health points is
Yeah, this is non-transformative upgrades. Exactly. These are boring. Exactly. 5%
just
more damage.
not very exciting.
That's the Diablo skill trees, essentially. Diablo 4 and 3.
So, brand new power
I mean, like they, yeah.
as in Dishonored and exciting new attacks in God of War are far more desirable than a few extra numbers on the game's underlying Excel spreadsheet. And don't forget the rules laid down in Metroid. One ability can serve multiple purposes,
Okay.
like the Ice Beam, which is both a weapon and a way to navigate the world. Ultimately,
Lol,
a good
that's
skill
cool.
will make you excited to finally unlock it, and then eager to go into the world and use it. Back to Origins for a second, I found myself caught in a really engaging loop where I'd unlock new abilities, excitedly test them out on a few camps and missions, which gave me enough experience points
These
for
damage
another
numbers.
ability, and so on.
Nice.
That being
okay.
said, skill trees should generally avoid mechanics that the player should already have by default.
Okay.
When I played Horizon Zero Dawn, I was peeved that I couldn't grab enemies from ledges like every other game of its ilk, until I found out it was an unlockable skill.
I see what it means. So if it's like a very basic action that anyone could perform, why should you spend a skill point for that? It's nothing that you have to inherently learn. It's like, yeah, you guys know these types of games that unless you have put a point into sneaking, you can't sneak. I hated that, man. That's so bad. You have to train sneaking in order to sneak. Every single person that has somewhat of a brain knows how to sneak. Or like, am I coping? Yeah, I think that's just, yeah. Yeah, I see what, yeah, I agree.
Same goes for Mirror's Edge Catalyst, which locked Faith's leg tuck move behind an upgrade menu, despite
tuck
it
move?
being accessible from the start in the first game. Oh, and don't feel the need to add in crappy skills just to boost the numbers.
Okay.
Some skill tree designers obviously believe that bigger is better.
You have no idea why the skill tree works, bro. This skill tree is the best skill tree I've ever seen in any game. This is like, I think he's wrong here. This doesn't mean bigger is better. Like, there are so many nuances to this skill tree. It's insane. Like, this right here is endless possibilities, essentially.
Check out these monster skill forests for Path of Exile and Salt and Sanctuary.
It's terrible for beginners, but it's like a heaven for any long-lasting PoE player. The PoB warriors of Path of
But
Exile.
if you ask me, a tightly pruned bush with a handful of truly interesting upgrades is often the best solution.
In PoE, I like the skill tree more than the gameplay. Yeah, me too. It's always a big question how you're gonna travel along. Yeah.
Another issue plaguing skill trees is the actual process of earning these skill points. Most games give you the points simply for playing the game normally, which feels like a missed opportunity.
Why?
Let's go back
Okay.
to Prey, which has these neuromod tools, the game's version of skill points, as physical objects in the world.
So you find
This
them.
means you have to go out there and find them, maybe by exploring the different nooks and crannies of Talos 1, or by doing side quests. Choosing how to
I don't think this works very well, because now it's forcing you to explore the world while not rewarding you for combat. I don't know if you get these items through combat, but it feels like a missed opportunity where I don't know how the stats work in this game. I never played it, but a best example in my opinion is Dragon Age Origins, where you can essentially level up your character normally by doing combat. So every enemy you beat gives you experience and then you level up. Boom, you level up, you get a new skill point, you spend skill points on your stat points. That's how you increase your stat points. You can get more magics, you get more weapon upgrades, stuff like that. But the game also offers you tomes. I think it was tomes. And if I'm wrong, then there was something else. But it's essentially pickups in the world that boost your stats. And so now you are forced, or not forced, you are rewarded for fighting in the game, which gives fighting an incentive, and you are rewarded for exploring the world because you can find permanent stat boosts and make your character that much more powerful. And so having just the stat boosts in the game, in my opinion, makes combat meaningless. Because, like, yeah, it's like a missed opportunity.
Dole out these skill points allows the designer to encourage a certain playstyle, or to make players check out optional content.
Yeah,
like in Zelda Breath of the Wild, where spirit orbs, which can be cashed in for health and stamina upgrades, are given for completing these shrines. That essentially turns the
so these are stat boosts, but you can still level up.
Entire world of Hyrule into one giant skill tree. This also makes players actively work towards improving their character, rather than randomly getting stat boosts as they play. This reminds me of Far Cry 3's crafting system. In that game, I knew I wanted a better gun holster, and the menu told me that I needed to get a few pelts from a certain animal. So I paused the main quest, found the animal's breeding ground on my map, and went hunting for pelts until I had enough to afford the holster. I wanted an upgrade and had to figure out how to get it, and had to actually work towards that goal. Getting the sprint slide though, well, I just played the game a bit more until I got given some skill points. Look, you don't really need to encourage the player to simply play through the main missions. That's why they bought the game in the first place.
Yeah, they bought the game, at least these games, for the story, of course.
It's the promise of skill points to encourage other ways to play. To play skillfully, or play on harder difficulties, or explore more, and so on. But be careful about exactly the sort of gameplay you encourage. Skyrim's system, where players get skill points for performing certain actions, can persuade players to just craft dozens of daggers simply to boost their crafting skill.
You can actually change this with a mod, but yeah, by default, this is kind of boring, I agree. You just craft a bunch of daggers, then you disenchant them, then you craft more daggers, then you disenchant them, you craft more daggers. You're essentially just a town warrior at this point.
You don't want to encourage grinding or gameplay that doesn't fit the core experience. One final issue is that these skill menus are pretty boring to navigate. They take you out of the game world and into a menu screen that looks like you're buying travel insurance or something. This is not a huge deal in an expansive adventure like...
Yeah, it's difficult to have that in the game. Like, even the old games struggled with this, and I haven't found like a really good example of how to do it really well. Maybe, but it doesn't really show a skill tree. If you think about Gothic 1, this is what it looks like in Gothic 1. And essentially what you have there is a bunch of stats. And so you can see here, this is in German, this is basically the level 59, it shows you the experience points, how many learning points you have, and then it shows you the strength, dex, mana, and life right here to the left. And then you have a bunch of talents that are either learned or you have not learned. So this guy have learned everything masterfully. So this says, in English, this is mastered. And then a percentage chance for how much they can crit. You know how you learn them? You talk to an NPC, let's say this guy right here, and then you ask him, can you train me? Yeah, there you have to learn to harmonize your weapon swing with your own movements. That'll make you faster in the attack. So essentially he's teaching you through text, through a dialogue, how to use your weapon in a better way. And then you could just take a look at this menu to figure out that you have now changed the stats. Like, you need to have the stat collection somewhere. But it is essentially the most, how do you say that? This is the most immersive thing that I've seen so far in games. And how to level up with your, let's say, skill tree. Maybe you guys know a better one, but yeah. It's difficult to avoid UI with this.
Like The Witcher, but it can massively slow the pace of a lightning quick game like Doom. So just make them quicker, like in Downwell, where it flashes up 3 upgrade choices between levels. You pick one, and away you go. or just
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, they're just like in Vampire Survivors. Mm-hmm.
make them automatic. Red Dead Redemption 2 has skill trees for both Arthur and his horse, and these upgrades for things like boosted stamina and sweet horse tricks just unlock as you play.
Hello there, Captain Crumb.
Though whether Doom even needed skill trees in the first place is another question entirely.
Mm-hmm.
The thing about skill trees is, there's loads of fun stuff you can do with them. How about skills that offer both advantages and disadvantages to the player?
Yeah,
or
that's
skills
the
that
best
can
one.
interlink in various ways, or skills
No, talking about advantages and disadvantages, right? The one that I have, the idea I have, which is this one, you know, burns deal a lot more damage, enemies affected by your burns run much faster. It gives you an upgrade, but also a downside. I like those the most.
where you can only equip a handful at a time. Skill trees feel like they're one of those systems that's in every game nowadays, simply because they're in every game nowadays. But that doesn't make them bad, it's just very easy to get a bit lazy with them and do what everyone else is doing, regardless of whether it suits the game, the experience, the pace, and so on. So get creative with them. A skill tree isn't about making the player wait half the game to get all of the mechanics they should have at the start, or going into a boring menu to get a boring health boost. They're about customizing your experience, about rewarding different ways of playing, and about forcing difficult choices. Let me know about your favourite skill trees in the comments below, and I eagerly await a million comments about...
I think he made up a good point, and thankfully we took a look at... We actually found a good solution for our game with that, you know. I will give the player the possibility to spend or to level up to a point where you can spend all of the skill points in the skill tree. And by that point, you have reached maximum level and you can't level up anymore. But I think he's wrong on the Path of Exile skill tree. It's not a big skill tree because it's big. It's a big skill tree because it offers a deep experience.
This crazy sphere grid nonsense from Final Fantasy X. I have no idea what this thing is.
Final Fantasy X, oh yeah, I remember that skill tree. Yeah, true. Alright guys, actually a very interesting video. I think it wasn't, I don't think it should have that many downvotes, but maybe these are Path of Exile enthusiasts, let's say that. And they got triggered by his comment on the Path of Exile skill tree, which, you know, they are from PoE fans, yes.